Hi, everyone. Welcome to Called to Create, a podcast of Latter-day Saints in publishing, media, and the arts. My name is Mike House. I'm the president of LDSPMA, and I am delighted to welcome Alisha Coakley and Scott Brandley of Latter-day Lights, another LDS podcast. How are you guys today?
Doing great.
Tired. It's a
Tired.
Monday. We're
Very
tired.
busy. Yes.
You're supposed to be relaxed on a Monday, Alisha.
That's Scott's excuse for his attire today, guys.
You guys participated in a Zoom call that LDSPMA does. We do them about monthly. The topic of the call was how to create a podcast, how to do your own podcast. It was wonderful, and I was actually able to join the call that evening. I got to thinking during that call and shortly afterward that we should do a little bit of cross-pollinating
Yeah.
and right, and have you guys on the Call to Create podcast. And you're also now going to interview Steve Piersanti, one of our founders and a past president of LDSPMA, on your podcast. There are lots of LDS-based podcasts out there. So my first question is, what is your thought about the universe of LDS podcasts out there, or to stay with the analogy, the garden of LDS podcasts out there that we can maybe cross-pollinate, that we're trying to share light with the world, right? All of us collectively. How can we maybe help each other a little more?
I think that's a great question. One of the things that we found doing over 150 podcasts now is it's really fun to have somebody from another podcast come onto your podcast, because a lot of
Yeah,
times you don't get to hear their story because they're talking to someone about their guest's story. And
yeah.
so, but they usually have a fascinating background and experiences that they've had that they can share with your audience.
For me, especially as we get closer to the second coming of Christ, which, we don't know when, but we know it's inevitable. It's going to come.
Right.
I feel like for me personally, I just love the networking part of it. So knowing like, hey, here's someone that's really good with trees, and here's someone that's really good with flowers, and here's someone that's really good with the animals and the plants. And knowing that I don't have to be the person that's good at all of these things. I can just stay in my area of the garden and do what I do best, but also that I have all these connections now to other people.
Oh, yeah.
I've seen with our guests coming on Latter-day Lights, we have connected our guests with other guests multiple times over. Same thing happens with other podcast people. We've shared guests on other podcasts where they've been able to get a different perspective of maybe a story or something like that. It's been really edifying to me, just being able to see all these connections. And it's one of those things that we're like, I'm constantly seeing like the hand of Heavenly Father in the networking, right? Like, oh, you just happen to be needing someone with this. And remember you did something with someone over here. It just makes you feel happy and seen.
One of my favorite podcasts right now is Follow Him with Hank Smith and John, by the way. I was watching an episode last week with Whitney Johnson, who worked with Clayton Christensen. I'm a gospel doctrine teacher now. She was in the sections that are coming up for teaching this week. And I was listening to her talk about S-curves. And my first career was in business management, corporate finance, those kinds of things. And so S-curves and disruption activities and those sorts of things, that right up my alley. I understood all of that. She was using S-curves to describe some of the early challenges the saints were going through and how the Lord helps us when we plateau in a certain area of our lives. He helps us jump to the next S curve that's going to challenge us to help us grow, right? And we have to engage in this personal disruption sort of activity. That was very useful for me, just to participate in that way. One of your guests was Dusty Smith. Do you remember Dusty?
Oh, yeah. We know.
And I saw another podcast by somebody else. I think it was True Millennial. I don't know his name, but he interviewed Dusty as well. He was talking about how he had gone into Elder Uchtdorf's office, him and his wife, who was not a member. And Dusty had been fighting against the church for 26 years, doing everything he could to tear down the church. And he's starting to turn his life around. He feels really guilty about everything he's done. He goes and meets with Elder Uchtdorf with his wife. And Elder Uchtdorf is questioning him about his progress. And Dusty's saying, and I haven't watched the whole podcast you did with him, but that whole episode, but he said, I don't think I can ever be forgiven. Maybe you can, but I can't because of everything I've done. Then Elder Uchtdorf looks at him and says, your sins are forgiven you. He has some conversations with his wife and says, I know Dusty really wants to be sealed to you. And you may not be ready yet, but we're going to take what you have and build on it. Apparently, the next day, she was ready to meet with the missionaries. And then shortly thereafter was baptized. And I saw the picture of that baptism photo. And one of those missionaries was where we used to live in Naperville, Illinois for 20 years. I knew that kid.
Oh,
he was one of the missionaries that baptized her. So pretty cool stuff. Well, I wanted to ask you a little bit about, you started this podcast about 3 years ago, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to talk a little bit about the genesis of it because now you're doing a series on that sort of thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you obviously have encountered a number of challenges going through and doing this podcast. What kinds of challenges have you really struggled with, and how have you grown from those S-curves, if you will?
What do you think, Scott?
I think one of the first challenges was figuring out how to make a podcast that was good quality, that was very consistent. We went through, well, originally we started with a company called Riverside, and it was fine, but it took a lot of time to edit the podcast. And then we found another one called StreamYard. Like StreamYard is cool because it allows you to be like a movie producer where you can flip the screen in real time. That's really fun because you can change the way it looks, and it made it a lot faster. It could probably cut down our editing time at least by half. And then the other thing was trying to find somebody that could edit your podcasts.
Yeah.
Luckily, I just got my kids to do it. I hired my kids and they've done a great job. Right now, my 15-year-old edits our podcast and he does an amazing job.
Wow.
So the little S curves like that, little challenges and things you kind of pick up. But yeah, once you figure that out, it just becomes a system and you record the podcast and just plug it into the system and then it kind of gets things done.
Yeah, I agree. I think figuring out the system was the hardest part, a lot of trial and error, just to get one episode out. For us, one of the things we talked about in the beginning was we wanted to have a bucket, a good number. I think we said 10 episodes that were pre-recorded already, so that in case we ran into some hiccups, we wouldn't have a lull where we didn't have anything. And it got to the point where for a while, we just kept scheduling them. Scott and I would be like, 4 to 6 hours recording a podcast on a Sunday and then spend however much time we needed on editing and posting. It was like a part-time job. Figuring out our schedules with the guests and finding that system was definitely hard. I think one of the other things that I knew it could happen, but I guess I just thought with an LDS main viewership that it just wouldn't, I don't know, maybe I was naive to it. People sometimes aren't the nicest in their comments. Like sometimes they're combative or controversial or really straightforward, and it can hurt your feelings. I've been on a health journey for the last 3 years. If you look back at the old podcast, I was much heavier. I had a lot more weight on me, and I had leukemia at the time and all these things were going on. You can see a difference in my health from then to here. I remember someone telling me something about they didn't feel like I should be going to the temple because I was overweight. And so I obviously must have not been living the word of wisdom. And I was like, that's kind of painful. And I've had comments about talking too much, and I do talk too much, but with the S-curve thing, even comments that aren't the nicest, I was able to look at that and just be like, it is true. Like I do need to get my health in order or stop talking or just get to
another person who talks too much, and that's me.
Yeah. So, that was a little bit of a painful S-curve for me personally, but I can see where all things can be worked together for our good. And I think that now we're at a place where they don't hurt as badly, and it's more of like, oh, okay, I didn't notice that about me.
You have a nice system set up now. We get together on a Sunday afternoon and chat with somebody and get to know so many people. 160 episodes roughly. You've gotten to know so many really interesting people. What has that been like? Just that expansion of your networking, just all of these new people and experiences. What does that feel like?
Feels like you're growing your family in a way that you could never have imagined. For example, we had you on the podcast
almost 2 years ago.
Right. And then we met at a conference, and it was like a little mini reunion.
That's
Hey,
right.
Mike, what's up? I feel like it kind of expands your LDS family. I feel like we're friends, and this is almost like a mini reunion just to be able to do this with you. So there are relationships that are built, and I think that's been fun. The other thing I would say is it's been amazing to have our eyes opened to all of the trials and struggles people have gone through and how God comes into their lives and helps them, gives them hope, gives them courage, helps them to overcome their trials and struggles in life. It really gives you a deeper appreciation for the blessings that God has in store for each one of us. What do you think, Alisha?
Yeah, I think for me, the really neat thing about meeting, and not just meeting, but having these really deep, really spiritual, really raw, real experiences shared with us. Like testimony meeting, you only get a couple minutes. So you only get highlights of stuff in testimony meeting. Even if you're doing a linger longer or something, you just really don't get to sit and listen to someone's full story a lot of the time. Clicks personally. Like you automatically have this connection within your spirits where you're like, oh, I remember you, like something on a soul level where it just feels very much like you get this Christ-like love for this person and hearing their story. I really, really love that. For me, my testimony has been changed and solidified in all of these different ways because of the testimonies that are being shared with us in such a real raw way. And I love seeing how many different people can have the gospel in their life and how they can all look so different. I didn't grow up in Utah, but I know that's the strongest culture area of Mormonism, right? Where a lot of people think that this is how the gospel looks and this is how you have to look if you're going to live the gospel. And if you're not in this bucket, then it's not for you, or you have to change to fit in there. And just having all these guests, we get to see people on so many different parts of their journey where maybe they don't have their whole testimony yet of everything, but the pieces that they do have are so solid and so beautiful that you can't help but love them. It makes it easier to see how Heavenly Father can really love each and every one of us individually while still wanting us to be better, but also accepting where we are and letting us grow in that space, in that time, and in that way.
Oh, for sure. There's a lot about the spiritual connections we have with each other that we brought from the pre-existence that we don't fully understand yet. There is a lot there. I looked at your top hitting episodes, the ones with the most views. And of course mine, so you have about 160. Mine was like number 175 on that list. I don't know how that's mathematically possible, but that's about where mine is. But your top four were Vinnie Tolman, who said he was put in a body bag, declared dead, and then came back to life and learned 10 heavenly lessons. And then Dusty Smith, who we just talked about, Dave Hyam, an excommunicated bishop who was working his way back into the church, and then Vinnie Tolman, who had a near-death experience. Any comments on those top hitters, if you will?
We love them. We love all of them.
Have you stayed in contact with some of them?
Oh, all of them. Yeah. Vinny, Scott, and I have both done coaching with him, and I've talked to him about some side projects too. Dave is coming back on, right? Is Dave going to come back on and do an episode?
Oh, good. Oh, very good.
I gotta check my calendar. So we're having Dave come back on to help with this series that we're doing this month that's showcasing Scott's book that he's giving away to everyone for free. And so Dave's going to come back on there. Dave, I loved his perspective because he's in the process. Like from bishop to excommunicated to coming back to the church again is just all over the place. And he's just such a sweetheart. And
I remember watching that episode. He's up in Canada, right?
Yeah, he is. And then same thing with Dusty. I mean, Dusty's, he was basically an apostate from the church. Just to see what the Lord can do is awesome. I highly recommend watching Vinny's first episode. His second one was a follow-up, but his first one, I mean, Scott, do you want to tell him about just what happened with your kids and your family and stuff after that?
Yeah. So that's another one of the cool things that we've experienced is every time we finish an episode, I always go out of the room. I'm like, I can't believe I just heard on this podcast. And I'll tell my family like the episode, and that's been really cool to be able to share that with them and help them grow their testimonies and their experience too. But in Vinny's case, that episode was so powerful. I had my family listen to it on a trip. And when we got back from that, it was about an hour and a half away. So we finished it up on the way back home that night. When we got back, my kids and me and Darla, my wife, had a 3 hour discussion about
Oh, wow.
that particular episode. It was really good. It was a spiritual conversation and they were actively participating in it. So yeah, it was really neat.
You're helping your own family and lots of other families with these stories,
Yeah.
bringing these stories to light, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's kind of neat because we do these episodes, and sometimes there were a few times where it'd be months before we actually aired it, just because we had so many others ahead of them in the process that you kind of forget some of the things you talked about. So then rewatching it, especially when it's all edited and they have the photos popped up, and where we get to just like enjoy the whole story and not worry about all the technical stuff and being a host. There were so many times where I'm watching these episodes and I'm like, oh, wait, what? I was clearly there for that. I don't remember hearing that. So it's almost like the spirit just gets to work again and again. It's really neat though. Every single one of our guests has a really special place in our hearts now. And like I said, we have this connection. Even though those are the top 4 popular episodes, I highly recommend watching them. I have some of my own personal favorites that I feel like should be popular, like Molly Bonner. Oh my gosh.
Oh,
Molly Bonner, just hilarious, an amazing, miraculous story. I loved Mika Reed. She was fantastic too. We had Cameron Daly. If you guys want to hear the funniest story in the entire universe, just go watch Cam. It's the shortest episode. He was like number 2, I think. All right. I was the first episode.
It was one of the first ones we ever did. Yeah.
Go back and watch that because Cameron Daly's I peed my pants episode is just you'll be rolling. And now they have such a sweet story. It's all about how they met. They have been going through some really tough times with Betsy, his wife, getting cancer, and them just going through this like whole emotional roller coaster ride now. So it's so sweet to see how much he was in love with her from before he even knew her name. But gosh, we have so many of them. I really loved, it's tragic, but the Graffs, Tim and Becky Graff, their story is so painfully beautiful. Eldon Buchanan, he's another, I don't know. I just love them all. It's hard to say what's a favorite.
The great thing is that you're bringing in all of these people that we don't know. They're not famous names. Molly Bonner has a name, right? He's part of the Bonner family, and he's spoken at LDSPMA as a keynote speaker, and he's a fabulous, dynamic, very funny speaker. Most of these folks, none of us have heard of. But every one of them is a son or a daughter of God, and he is helping them in miraculous ways, just as he helps the people who have famous names on the marquees, right? It's exactly the same. And I love that that's what you guys are doing.
Yeah, we haven't had very many LDS celebrities on the show, but for the most part, it's just everyday members of the church sharing their stories of faith and inspiration. We feel like we're giving them a microphone to share that experience with other members of the church, building stories, right?
It's awesome. And maybe this is a good segue to your book, Faith to Stay.
Right.
And you just launched it. And this journey of writing this book and some of those experiences were part of what led to the creation of this podcast too, right? So why don't you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. When I was a bishop back in 2014, I had a couple members of the church leave, and that was really hard for me. It actually caused me to have a crisis of faith of my own. I was able to overcome that. And in the book, I talk about how I was able to do that. Because of that experience, I was able to relate more when people are going through these trials of faith in their lives. This book is a 9-year journey of experiences and discoveries and insights, a ton of research that went into it. It's definitely different than most faith promoting books out there. One of the things that I talk about is a trip I went on in Nauvoo, Illinois. We went there because the guy who had been collecting artifacts around Nauvoo his whole life. And my dad got wind of it. And we went to this auction, and it was this huge metal building with just rows and rows and rows of tables with all these ancient artifacts on it. It was incredible. Who knew that all that stuff was around Nauvoo? One of my 5 episodes to launch my book is about that experience, that trip. And other things we did on that trip was we explored petroglyphs and different geological locations in southern Illinois. We found evidence of what we believe to be Christ, petroglyphs where there were hands with holes in the palms. We found a prayer altar. And the way we know it's a prayer altar is a fascinating discovery. We went to this location on a cliff that a Baptist minister that lived there had gone many times with his dad. It's just a locally known place where there's these petroglyphs. And we went there with him while we were there, and he's like, I got to show you this cool thing. It's called the throne. And we get there, and there's this seat that looks like it's been etched into the rock. And it had 3 panels of petroglyphs above it that were all etched into rock. And we're sitting there, and there's these etchings on the actual seat of this throne, and we're looking at it. And it looked like there were these inverted handprints carved into the rock. So my uncle put his hand on one, and it fit perfectly into it. We found another one for his other hand, and we realized it wasn't a throne, it was an altar. He kneeled in front of these 3 panels. It was incredible. We were freaking out. Southern Illinois. There's also a row of hilltop forts all along the bottom of Southern Illinois. We went to several of them, a lot on private property, but some of them are parks. And there's these massive stone walls protecting them. Like things people just don't know. We were like Indiana Jones. We explored this. That was one of the fun things in the book. But there's a lot of really cool discoveries and insights about things that can build your faith as a member of the church.
There's so many things we don't know about all that stuff. I watched Angel Studios has this documentary on their site called The Mosaic Church. Most mainline Christians will tell you that the early saints just met in homes. That's all they ever did. I contend that can't be true because they had to have temples. They had to have sacred, dedicated spaces for the higher ordinances. That just had to be true. And now they've discovered right next to a prison in Megiddo, Israel, the place where the Battle of Armageddon is going to take place, they found this floor that's mosaics with writing, and they know that was the floor of a church from the 1st or 2nd century AD. So they were building spaces that they could meet in and worship. And now there's some archaeological evidence behind it. There's lots of cool stuff out there all over the world.
Scott's book is awesome. It's so easy to read too, and it just kind of puts things into this common sense perspective while still keeping the spirit. One, I think it's awesome that he's been dedicated for 9 years writing this book. Then he gets it all written and he's giving it away. You know what I mean? Like, you guys can download a free copy of it. It's not a money-making thing for him. It's just really mission-based.
You can buy it. I've seen it on Amazon.
You can buy a copy, yes. But if you just want to read it, you can do the download, and it comes with this beautiful artwork that his daughter Clarissa created for the cover. She's just an amazing artist. So you can download the artwork. And I love that what we're doing this month is we're taking pieces of the book and having past guests come on so we can discuss those things, like how do you have, foundational faith in just the basics.
You're taking the book in sections, painting some of your past guests with those sections and going through them. Is that essentially?
Just really we're not really going over the book per se, but we're having the discussions about what's in the book, if that makes sense. So you're still going to be able to read it on your own and get things out of there. But the discussions are really nice because the guests we have coming on, we've just Scott handpicked them, right? For like, those are the guests that I think would be really good for this topic.
And you've done 2 episodes so far.
They've had experiences in their stories that could relate to some of the things in the book, like having a faith crisis or repentance. This Book of Mormon trip, I had my uncles that went with me on it. We told the story and things like that. So there's 5 of those type of podcasts in this mini series that we're doing this month, and it's just a lot of fun.
So those are all consecutive. They're 5 episodes in a row. You've done 2 so far, right?
Yeah.
I want to watch those. That sounds really interesting to me. I am interested in the Book of Mormon stuff. You've seen me at some of the Book of Mormon evidence conferences.
Right.
There's a lot of really cool things going on out there. It doesn't necessarily impact my faith. I mean, I believe in the Book of Mormon anyway. There's a lot of really cool knowledge out there and some things we can learn from it. And there were things in Illinois that people I knew were finding, like what you just described. So good things happening.
Yeah, I call them parallels. We don't know exactly where it all took place, but there's some really interesting things out there.
Are there any final comments you'd like to leave with our viewers of the Call to Create podcast?
Well, I think for me, our podcast was started because Scott received inspiration on it. He wasn't afraid to reach out and ask me if I would chug along with him. And
how did you know each other, real quick?
So he was my bishop when we both lived in the same ward. And so I was in the Young Women's presidency and he was bishop. And we loved singing musicals. We would perform. There's just a whole world of Scott that people don't know about.
Yeah.
The public should know. So that's how we know each other. For me, I would just say, anyone out there, when you get the inspiration, don't be afraid to just start. Just do the thing. Yeah. The systems will come. The help will come. It doesn't have to be big. It can be messy. Whatever you feel called to create, just get started on it. Do it wherever you're at and let the Lord be your partner, and he'll guide you down whatever path you need to go down. I think a lot of times we're afraid after we put in a lot of work for something, we're afraid to move on to the next thing or to change it. We're afraid that we have to stay in this little bubble. But Heavenly Father's so big and you just don't know what he has out there. So just follow the Spirit, learn how to hear him, and don't be afraid to be a creator. We're designed to be co-creators with God. It's a fun ride if you let it be.
He is very interested in what we want to create.
Spreading light doesn't have to be your typical setting up missionary discussions. It doesn't have to be LDS based either. We can spread light to all the world just by living who we are and pointing our faith back to God. There's a lot of ways to do it. So just do it.
Scott?
LDSPMA is a great place to get your creative juices flowing, especially in the LDS community. Our podcast wouldn't exist without it. That's where we really got the inspiration for it. I learned a lot about writing my book from the LDSPMA too. Met a lot of really cool people. There's a lot of creativity, a lot of inspiration you can gain from it, a lot of insight from people that have gone through what you've been through. It's way easier to learn from somebody that's done it. You can cut that learning curve down a little bit than just trying to figure it all out by yourself. If you can limit that learning curve, it just makes it so much easier.
Yeah. It is a great community, LDSPMA. And that's the reason I'm here. My salary as president is zero. So I really enjoy what we're doing. For people out there who have a story they'd like to share, I know your website is latterdaylights.com, right? And I know you have a contact page, and anyone can reach out to you and say, here's my story, right?
Yeah.
And I know you have a process for then reaching out to them and talking to them about it first and figuring out what could possibly be done with it.
We've had a lot of authors on the show actually, because they've figured out their story. They've got it down. So it's actually quite nice.
We work on our elevator pitches, right?
Oh, yeah.
Well, thank you both again for being willing to join me today and talk a little bit about your journey and all of the fascinating things you're discovering on your journey, which is ongoing, and you're doing one of these every week, which is amazing to me. I absolutely love what you're doing. I'm glad you're doing it. You're doing a lot of good in the world. So thank you again very much.
Thanks, thank you. Thanks for being a host, being a guest, and all the things.
Yep. All right. Take care.
Thanks,
guys.